Welcome everyone to IsisParenting Sleep Support Webinar and Chat. My name is Nancy Holtzman. I'm a mom and baby nurse educator, board certified lactation consultant, and board certified in pediatrics. I'm here outside of IsisParenting's home office outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And with me today is my friend and colleague, Megan Casano. And today we are going to talk about newborn sleep, the earliest weeks. And I've been calling it Tired Parents, Tiny Babies. And we will talk a little bit about what you can expect during this time frame, how to help your babies figure out daytime from nighttime, how you can help your babies sleep safely and hopefully get a little bit of sleep yourself, and how to begin to consider the future months around the corner so that you can get into some more predictable sleep patterns. So I think we'll launch right into it because we've got a lot to cover today. Hi, Meg.
Hi, Nancy. I missed you last week. Uh-oh, can you guys hear me? Nancy, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, great. I said I missed you last week.
I think I poked my head in. I was in a conference room at the time, and I was on my iPhone, and it was really fun to actually try to connect that way, like a lot of the other moms and parents do using the iPhone or the iPad. It worked quite well with the Adobe Connect app, so I would highly recommend that.
See, I didn't even know. I would have been I would have been nervous if I had known that. Jeez. All right, well, we can get started. Thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Meg. As you can see, maybe from my photo here, I do have 4 little girls of my own. My oldest is going to turn 7 in about a month, and my baby is 16 months. So I've been through the newborn phase 4 times. And I always say to my husband, oh man, I could really kind of take or leave the first 12 weeks, at least in terms of sleep. Sometimes it's really challenging. That's not to say there's not a lot you can do and think about to get off, started on the right foot. So the first thing especially for those of you here in the chat room today with newborns, congratulations. It's such, a really wonderful, special time. I love this beautiful picture of mom doing a little kangaroo care with her newborn. So we just wanted to sort of mention some of our favorite products that we think are virtually essential as you are thinking about getting your baby started on the right track for good sleep. And you'll hear me mention some of these things more, but you're definitely going to need, if you don't have already, you need a great swaddle. We're going to talk about swaddling. The Isis Super Swaddle, the Woombie, and the Miracle Blanket are kind of our top 3 favorites. You'll definitely need a continuous white noise machine. That's white noise that will stay on throughout the night or throughout the length of your baby's nap. It's not something that shuts off on a timer. This is if you live in a location that has external noises that might wake your baby. Some sort of bedside co-sleeper or bassinet so that your baby can be in the room with you as a newborn. Blackout shades or drapes to make sure the place your baby is sleeping is very dark. Sling wrap, something to carry your baby safely, and of course a support network. Family and friends are great, but even more formalized, ISIS has a lot of really great classes for new parents, Great Beginnings, New Mothers Group, Nancy's lactation webinars, and breastfeeding support. So you name it, ISIS will have it. Okay, so the first thing you want to think about when deciding what your expectation should be for your baby's sleep is your due date. Believe it or not, your baby's due date does matter. And so when we're talking through this webinar week by week, when I say 1 week or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, you actually want to be adjusting from your baby's due date. So if your baby was born 2 weeks early, it could take you, when your baby is 8 weeks is really when your baby might be considered a 6-week-old in terms of sleep development and organization. Once you get past about 6 months of age adjusted, then you can stop thinking about due date because at that point babies are all pretty much on the same schedule, or at least have the capability of being on pretty much the same schedule. So be counting in terms of your baby's due date not your baby's actual birth date. Okay, and so of course we have to just give our little plug for safety. Always safer sleep, and doing the best you can to reduce your baby's risk of SIDS, SUID. You are definitely, baby's going back to sleep, like this little one, snuggled up beautifully in her wombie, back to sleep every time. And you're telling other caregivers and grandparents too, cooler, in the summer heat now, cooler, if you're going to err on either side, cooler is better. We sometimes don't like to recommend an actual temperature number, because if your baby's over bundled, then it becomes sort of a moot point. Your baby doesn't need a hat. You want to dress your baby for your room temperature, and you want to avoid overheating. You can assess this by putting a couple of fingers down your baby's chest or down her back. And if she feels like she's hot, sweaty, clammy, she might be too hot. If she feels, just kind of warm and dry at the core, that's just about right. Don't worry if her nose feels chilly or her ears feel chilly, or even if her fingers feel chilly, that's fine. That's more immature circulation in a newborn. That's normal. If her fingers feel icy or her toes feel icy, then she might be too cold. But having fingers and noses be chilly is normal. Do keep your baby's feet covered. Nancy, did you want to add something in at this point? I heard your mic come on. Okay. I thought I heard your mic come on. And so offering pacifier at sleep times is recommended by the AAP. Of course, if your baby doesn't like the pacifier, you shouldn't be trying to force the pacifier into your baby's mouth. So that's, don't feel bad if your baby doesn't like the pacifier. That's okay. Room sharing is recommended, room sharing on a separate surface, like a pack and play or a co-sleeper, someplace where you'll place your baby to sleep in close proximity to you overnight. And even, bringing your baby into your bed for doing nighttime care, like a feeding, is perfectly fine. And then, of course, the recommendation is that you do return your baby to her own sleep surface when you've finished the feeding or the soothing in the night. And then, of course, you're going to avoid loose blankets, loose bedding, loose swaddling, anything that your baby could get sort of entrapped in. You're avoiding loveys, blankies, stuffed animals, anything puffy, bumpers, anything that, that could be a potential risk for your baby. And you're also avoiding smoke. Any type of smoke, secondhand, thirdhand. Okay, so I know it can seem overwhelming, but those are the basics. Safe, you're always looking to have safe sleep for each sleep episode. And this, of course, is if your baby is sleeping in your room, for example, or in her bassinet or her crib. Certainly there might be other times your baby is asleep in somebody's arms, in a car seat, in a stroller, in a carrier. During those times, you just want to make sure you're using those devices as they were recommended, proper weight limit, proper buckling, proper head and neck alignment. Your baby's little tiny neck isn't sort of flopped over out of position, with the slings and stuff. You're making sure your baby can, has a passage to breathe. Nancy, you're good with this stuff too. Is there anything that I'm missing? I don't want to dwell on this too much, but anything you want to add?
Yeah, we do have a lot of other stuff to cover, but you really can't talk about newborn sleep and not talk about SIDS risk reduction and sleep safety. So I think, just to summarize, a firm, flat surface, no pillows or quilts near the baby, no gaps or crevices the baby could roll into or off of. Many people do like to bring the baby into bed for nursing or to cuddle them back to sleep. The recommendation, of course, is that then after that you move them to the firm, flat surface at your bedside. The AAP does actually recommend room sharing. They don't recommend bed sharing, but they do recommend having the baby in arm reach proximity. And just to let people know that breastfeeding is a SIDS reduction method that statistically reduces the rate of upper respiratory infections, and SIDS is most common following upper respiratory infections. And in addition, cigarette smoke is a very high risk factor for SIDS. So secondhand smoke is being present in a room where somebody is smoking, and thirdhand smoke is actually the chemicals on clothing and hair. So again, there's no better reason or time to encourage a partner.
All right, so here we go, week by week. Remember, if your baby was born before due date, you might be a little bit behind. You might have to adjust. First week, some people call it the honeymoon. You're both exhausted from your birth experience, whatever it might have been. Hopefully you're home and settling in. Hopefully you have some help. Try to get as much sleep as you can. You know, the old saying, sleep when the baby sleeps. If it's your first child, hopefully you can do that. If you have other children, it might not be so easy. So just do the best you can, getting the most rest you can. Again, sharing a room with your baby is recommended, with your baby on his own sleeping surface. Work on establishing breastfeeding. Again, Nancy hosts a webinar every Thursday, like with the sleep webinar, on a ton of different topics that you might find helpful. Nancy, I think that's the link here. She's got blogs, she's got information, she tweets about it. So you got great resources for breastfeeding. You want to focus on learning to feed your baby in whatever way you're choosing or able to do so. Feeding yourself, keeping yourself hydrated, and good nutrition, and just focusing on your physical recovery from birth. Your baby may be sleeping a lot. Your baby may be sleeping a lot this first week. It might seem like your baby is sleeping most of the time. Okay, as far as how much your baby sleeps, here's a little sort of sidebar to the science stuff that you always get from ISIS. You know that our information is based in research. Your baby's, the main driver of your baby's sleep as a newborn is sleep pressure. Sometimes, also called homeostatic pressure. That just means it's how tired your baby is. It means there's no schedule, there's no, clock time, your baby's napping at these specific times during the day. For a newborn, your baby needs to sleep when she's tired. And that means that's going to be every 45 to 120 minutes max. And in the first 6 weeks, it might even be unlikely that your baby would comfortably be able to stay awake for a full 2 hours. And the way you sort of help determine these windows of wakefulness is how long and how restorative was the previous nap. So in other words, a little 15-minute snooze in somebody's arms won't get you as much awake time as a nice 2-hour nap in a bassinet or a swing, or another longer nap. So you are just paying attention to your baby's sleep pressure. How tired is he? And he needs to sleep as often as he's tired, which might be every 45 to 120 minutes at the most. Sleep will be irregular in timing, and sleep will be irregular in duration. Some naps will be very short, some naps will be long, and that's perfectly normal. Here's just a little graph for you demonstrating this graph right here is the sleep pressure. It's simply the buildup of tiredness with time. The longer your baby is awake, the more tired he's becoming. That does not necessarily mean the easier it is to get him down to sleep. But you should feel totally comfortable as the mom of a newborn saying, oh my goodness, you have been awake for 1 hour and 30 minutes. I know you are tired and you need to sleep. And you're thinking about providing your baby with the opportunity to do that. This other graph here is depicting, this is actually an older baby's circadian rhythm. This is hormonally driven. This becomes very regular. This is what will be your baby's schedule. But that doesn't develop until a little bit older. Nighttime comes first, around the 10-week mark or so. A little bit earlier, it starts kind of when you see that social smiling beginning. So we're talking now about this first 6 weeks. And so your babies don't yet have this circadian rhythm driving them to sleep. They only have sleep pressure. Here we're going to show you a really cool graph. This is called a sleep plot or a sleep assessment. This is something that we use in our individual sleep consults. It's something that parents find really helpful, a great visual in tracking your baby's sleep. And just to show you what you're going to see, what parents do is they shade in boxes when their baby's asleep, and they leave boxes blank when their baby's awake. And if you notice here, over here, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., this is bedtime range. Your night sort of circles around. And then over here, this is wake time. Okay, so just so you can sort of see what's happening, middle of the graph here is waking hours. And so if you take a look, here you go. I love this. Is so cool. So those of you who might be joining today, this is where you are. So don't feel bad. This is normal. This is a real baby's sleep that's been graphed, and this is pretty typical. I've graphed my baby's sleep. Erin has graphed her baby's sleep, and this is what it looks like. And so you can see that there's, night is day, day is night. There's no pattern, and so this is what we expect. And I remember I said around like the 10-week mark or so, that's when you start to see that first organization of a bedtime, a consolidated stretch of predictable sleep in the first third of the night, and it just gets better and better from there. So there is predictability coming shortly, but for now, just be reassured knowing that where you are is totally normal, and most of you in the room are somewhere in here too. And so you're all in this together, but it will get better. It will become beautiful and organized as your baby grows. Okay, weeks 2 through 6, honeymoon is over. Your baby might be waking up more, might seem more fussy, might have longer spells of wakefulness during the day, might require some more soothing efforts from you in order to keep him calm, happy, and settled. And so this is the time to learn what soothes your baby. Rock, bounce, and sway is something we often refer to, those multiple planes of motion. If your baby's a little on the fussier side, you might be bouncing on an exercise ball while kind of, swinging from side to side. You might be doing deep knee bends, swaying with your baby. So see if you can figure out a soothing technique that your baby likes. Might be wearing your baby. Do try to allow other caregivers to soothe. I know you moms, dads might feel like I can do it best, so it's just easier if I do it, and that may be true. But try to let some other people jump in and help you too, so that your baby is becoming tolerant of other caregivers doing some soothing. If you're nursing your baby and you find your baby is really prone to falling asleep while nursing, see if you can try some methods other than nursing from time to time. Have some other soothing techniques in your repertoire, because that will be helpful down the road as you're thinking about the path to independent sleep. It will be helpful if you have some other ways to soothe your baby besides nursing every single time. So just be sort of having that on your radar a little bit if independent sleep will be your goal at some point. Okay, Nancy, I think Nancy's going to talk to you about this slide.
Yes. Oh, I love this picture. Little girl. Let's see. I was just typing, and now I'll just say that true. A lot of babies don't like the act of being swaddled. Heck, who would like to be put in a straitjacket and sit there awake that way? It's not very fun. But there's a lot of things that babies don't like that we as adults have to make the executive decision and say, well, once swaddled and once I get this baby to sleep, how does this baby sleep? Do they sleep better swaddled with the arms down than unswaddled? And if so, then again, you make the executive decision that swaddling is going to be better for them. It doesn't mean that they coo happily when you start swaddling them. And that's a precursor to this slide, because I have a popular Storify article that I called Sleeps at the Breast, Not in the Bassinet. And it's a common scenario for babies around a month or so old that they will quickly fall asleep when eating. And then as soon as you try to take them off the breast or put them down, within just a little while, they're awake and flailing and crying again. And so it seems like they're not being very efficient eaters, and then they're not actually able to sleep in between feedings either. So one of the approaches you can use is to try to make sure that your sleepy baby is taking a good meal when you're nursing, and then afterwards you can swaddle them up snug with the arms down, and we'll get to that on the next slide, how to settle them down so that maybe they can sleep for an hour or two before the next feeding. So if you do have one of these sleepy babies at 2 and 3 and 4 weeks old, hopefully not jaundiced, hopefully gaining weight well, but still falls asleep within a few minutes at the breast and never seems to get a full feeding in, you want to undress them. You want to try for some, you could do some skin to skin time to let them wake up gradually and see if they start to move around and root for the breast. Watch for an early sleep stage. So a lot of breastfeeding experts will say, watch the baby, not the clock. You can kind of keep your eye on both, because if it's been 3 or 4 or 5 hours during the day, it is certainly time to, as Meg and I like to say, put away the laundry and start rousing the environment a little bit, so that gradually you're opening the shades, you're opening and closing cabinets, you're raising the stimulation around them a little bit so that they'll start to wake up slightly. If they're in a deep, deep sleep, let them finish sleeping that cycle for another 15 or 20 minutes, because soon you'll see them cycle into light sleep. That's when their eyelids move and you see their face make all those adorable little expressions, and they smile or they frown or they nurse in their sleep. In that light sleep, when they're starting to get a little bit wiggly, that's the best time to pick them up, talk to them gently, undress them, skin to skin, sit them, flex them up, sitting up on your lap. That's called the doll's eye maneuver, and a few gradual reclines and then sitting them up on your lap. A few episodes of that usually will help them to open their eyes, and that's when you can start a feeding. And then when they do fall asleep at the breast, use a lot of breast compression, which is a long, firm squeeze at the base of the breast. Gently poke, prod, pluck, annoy their arms, their legs, their torso. Try to avoid touching their head, and avoid a rocking chair or glider rocker, because that rhythmic motion is going to make them sleepy as opposed to keeping them interested in eating. You can rouse them by burping, changing the diaper, switching sides several times, and so on. Lots of breast compression. You really want to try to keep them drinking, not just sleeping at the breast for most of the feeding. And then when they're finished, maybe you've got your swaddle blanket already laid out, because I would recommend in general not nursing your baby when they're swaddled, but you can swaddle them afterwards. And then if they woke up and fussed or cried because you took them off the breast and swaddled them and they weren't happy about that, now you've got them swaddled, and you can usually get them right back to that relaxed, sleepy, or asleep position quickly by putting them back to the breast or walking, bouncing, swaying, whatever. But now they're asleep and swaddled, and then you'll have an easier time settling them back down. And when you do, if you're using a bassinet or a Moses basket, try putting your baby down swaddled so that their arm is right up against the side. Babies often like to feel like they're up against something. Here is a nice array of different types of swaddles that we like for newborns. We're not talking about the Magic Merlin sleep suit here, because that's a product that we like for 3 and maybe 10 weeks on up. And here we're talking about true newborns up to 6 months. So I know there's a lot of people on Twitter and in the chat room today who have questions about the 4-month regression. Right now, we're talking about newborns. And so the Super Swaddle, there's a link so you can learn how to do that arms down snug swaddle. And then again, we're talking about the Woombie, which is like this little snug caterpillar sock that zips up. It's very easy to use. And the Miracle Blanket as well is a very popular swaddle blanket with no Velcro or snaps to it. I think Meg is going to, I'll just finish the slide and then you can take back over. Meg, of course, is advocating for not always nursing the baby to sleep, but putting the baby down drowsy but awake. When you have a 2 or 4 or 6 week old, it's pretty much default that they fall asleep nursing, but there will be other times that they fall asleep not nursing, and that's nice too. The hardest weeks really are weeks 3 to 7 or 4 to 8. or in that range, because young babies essentially do those three things: eat, sleep, fuss. If they're not eating or sleeping, chances are you're actively involved in keeping them happy, and both the eating and the sleeping actively involve you. So this is a hard time for parents and for moms, and this is why I do recommend that you have a support network during this time frame. Nursing laying down during the day, so the lights are on and you can see what you're doing. You want to have, well, I won't get into it. There's that link takes you to detailed instructions, so you can learn how to nurse on both breasts without turning over or moving your baby over onto the other side. Learning how to do that well during the day comfortably, so that you don't get sore and that your baby gets a good feeding, can help you for some 3 or 4 a.m. feedings as well. Again, when your baby is drowsy in your arms and swaddled, you can transition them down, do a little vestibular motion by holding onto their feet. So you've placed them down in the bassinet. And then if you hold their feet and gently jiggle their feet, it makes their whole body gently jiggle, and you want to see a little bit of rhythmic movement in the head. And that's what's going to actually lull them and let them drift back off to sleep. Don't get over their face. Don't make eye contact with them. Let them gaze off into the corner of the room or the light, and they'll find something to look at, and slowly they'll calm and they'll fall asleep. And don't be afraid to soothe your newborn. These babies are very young. They're going to need help to fall asleep, to stay asleep, to feel safe and secure. Baby wearing is a great way to make sure that your baby is getting adequate sleep. So you can put them in a sling or carry a wrap and go for a walk, or sit on the physio ball and bounce. And a lot of babies who will only sleep for 20 minutes in a bassinet will sleep for an hour and a half in the ergo or in the Moby wrap. And that's good sleep for a 3 or 6 week old. There's no reason to fight it. That's the way humans have done it for hundreds of thousands of years. Okay, Meg.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, so I think that I won't spend too much time on Swaddles, swings, slings, bouncers, as Nancy said, and we like to say, don't be afraid to soothe. The bottom line is your baby at this age needs sleep and needs a lot of it. And so as long as it works and as long as it's safe, you should feel perfectly comfortable doing it, of course, with an eye to the future. For example, if at some point you think you might want your baby sleeping in a crib or a space that's not on your body, you might want to start practicing, like for example, if you have a bassinet in your room, but you have a crib set up in a baby's nursery, it would be fine to put your baby in the crib during the day to start practicing getting the hang of sleeping in that environment. If you've been holding your baby for every single nap or wearing your baby for every nap, you might want to start putting your baby in a swing or a seat, just sort of a transitional step onto moving away from always sleeping on a warm body to sleeping in something that might not be moving all the time. Again, these are just, there are no hard rules here. You have to do what you're comfortable with, do what's safe, and keep your baby rested. But if your ultimate goal is independent sleep, you're sort of looking to start thinking about practicing some of these things. The room environment. Now, if your baby's under 6 weeks old, the sleep environment isn't hugely important yet because your baby's not responding quite yet in terms of the circadian rhythm to things like light and dark exposure. However, it's coming, and it's a great habit to get into. So we've recorded a webinar, of course, on this topic, having a dark room, using true room darkening, blackout shades, using continuous white noise, using cool mist humidifiers if your baby is dry. These kinds of things to think about a great sleep environment will be helpful. If your baby has some day-night confusion, and also this speaks a little bit to the fussiness that Nancy sort of alluded to. A lot of times we see that fussiness sort of increasing and peaking as your baby's getting close to the 6th week from due date mark. And although it's really frustrating in the evening when that's happening, it's actually a sign of something good, that it's a sign of, we think, it's the circadian rhythm starting to develop and sort of this internal conflict that makes babies fussy. But like I said, it's a sign of that circadian rhythm developing. Your bedtime will start to get earlier, more predictable. You'll start to get more predictable stretches of sleep in the overnight. But while that's happening, you might notice some fussiness in the evening. You might have your baby doing a bit of day-night confusion, like sleeping these ultra long stretches of time, and your baby might sleep up to 4 hours, but that might occur day or night, and it might not be helpful if your baby's sleeping from like 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then is awake, or seems like he's awake, dozing on and off until 1 in the morning. And so if that's the case for you, then you want to, you may shorten that long stretch of afternoon sleep, which means wake your baby, okay? This is one of the few times when you might wake your baby, is to help reverse the day-night confusion. And so shortening a long afternoon nap, if your baby's sleeping away the late afternoon and early evening, you might wake your baby. One thing you don't want to do, though, and I say this because we hear this a lot, you don't want to force your baby to stay awake for extended periods of time. People will say, oh, well, I was told keep him awake for 3 hours in the evening so he'll fall asleep and sleep longer at night. That's actually not helpful, and it actually changes some of those protective wake mechanisms that your baby is having overnight for good reason. And so you actually don't want to force your baby to stay awake for long periods of time, but it is okay that you shorten afternoon sleep episodes. So instead of having one hugely long 3 or 4 hour early evening nap, you might end up with your baby having 2 shorter naps. And then at this stage, of course, your baby, remember, day is night, night is day, the sleep is just happening. There's not predictability at this point. But you're sort of looking, in this case, to move that longest stretch of sleep up to 4 hours into what is a better social fit. So you're looking to move it into the night. At this point, it's always a good idea to minimize your nighttime interaction. Yes, of course, you're always gentle, calm, and loving, but you're quiet, you're kind of boring, you're not turning on toys, you're not turning on lights, you're not playing stimulating games or singing, you're just sort of doing quiet shushing. You go into night mode. Diapering only when necessary. You don't have to change every little tiny wet unless your baby's prone to rashes or yeast rashes at this point. Certainly you're changing poopy diapers, but you're doing just the least that you can. Feeding overnight is on demand, so if your baby's hungry, she certainly needs to eat. At this point, we're not talking about reducing feedings at all. But remember, as Nancy said too, your baby's spending most of his time in REM sleep at this age. That REM sleep in babies is a lot of information processing, making memory consolidation. This is where a lot of learning is taking place. And when babies are in REM sleep, they do not have REM sleep paralysis the way adults do. So your little newborn in doing a lot of REM sleep could be moving, scooching, grunting, groaning, crying out. And so, although I would never suggest you leave your baby crying, I do suggest to just sort of evaluate before you rush in at the first little peep or squeak. Just evaluate for half a minute or so and see, hey, is my baby really awake at this point? Or is this just some normal REM sleep cryouts that is a normal part of what little babies do? Okay, so remember, your baby's circadian rhythm is coming soon. Around 10 weeks, might be as early as 7 weeks. When you start to see social smiling becoming more and more regular, when you start to see fewer poopy diapers overnight, these are good signs. When the evening fussies taper a little bit, this would be the time as you get to about 6 weeks to start thinking about a bedtime routine. This is the time to allow your baby's bedtime to drift earlier, or, what amounts to sort of a series of naps in the evening where you might just kind of be hanging out with your baby or your partner or watching a show or talking on the phone. You're starting to let those series of naps now sort of merge into an actual bedtime with real consolidated sleep. You are thinking about your baby's sleep environment, making sure it's ideal for sleep. Your baby's exposure to darkness becomes extremely important. Making sure when you want your baby to be asleep at night, your baby is in the dark. Your baby's making sleep associations, your baby is figuring out where the right place to sleep is. And so if the crib is on your radar at all for future sleep, you want to think about starting to practice it from time to time. Same thing goes for, if you've been holding your baby or wearing your baby for every single nap, but that doesn't seem like it's going to be sustainable. By the end of the 6-week mark or so, you're thinking about trying to nap your baby in different locations as well. Continue to sleep your baby as frequently as he needs it, as often as he's tired. Continue to expect irregularity in day sleep. And so if your baby will be starting some sort of childcare and they're asking you, well, what's his schedule? What's his schedule? Don't feel pressure. I know it's hard, but your baby will probably not have a true daytime schedule until at least 5.5 months. So just do the best you can to keep him rested for now. Some early morning nap organization will start to pop up around 3 to 4 months. Again, we have another problem-solving webinar for 6 weeks to 4 months that we recorded, if you want to check that out. And then always, individual sleep consults to help you address your particular baby with your particular circumstances. A lot of families' babies have medical issues, reflux, allergies, breastfeeding concerns, unusual caregiver situations, siblings, you name it, we can help you. And so please don't hesitate to give us a call. Remember, as you are going forward, to always hit the basics: your baby's exposure to light and dark, sleep environment, when and how to establish a schedule, bedtime routine, and naps. And we have webinars recorded on all of these topics that you can go back and listen at any time, and share those links with your friends, and let us know if we can help.
Always. All right, I see that we ran out of time, as usual. A lot of information today. But just given the fact that next week we were going to do all Q&A, and I've been seeing, I don't know if it has to do with the supermoon, that it's been a full moon and a very big full moon for the last few nights, but a lot of questions about 4-month sleep regression, true or false, or is it just the beginning of sleep association issues and babies ready to start getting into more of a pattern and unsure what that pattern is, and so on. So I think that would be a good topic for next week. What do you think, Meg? Oh, I think I caught Meg off guard. Okay, Meg, are you there?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I had muted my microphone. Right. Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We had lots of participants, lots of great photos, and lots of new names as well. Please help us spread the word. I think everybody has heard me say before, if you're regular to the webinars, every Tuesday we have the sleep webinar. Every Thursday we have a breastfeeding and pumping webinar. This Thursday I'm going to be speaking about breastfeeding the older baby. So after 1 year, when your baby gradually becomes a toddler and you continue that nursing relationship, we'll talk about that. And let's see, tomorrow I have a webinar at noon on gestational diabetes. So if that's an interesting topic for you, let me know and I'll give you the link. That one you have to pre-register. Please help by spreading the word. Like us on Facebook, retweet the ISIS tweets about the webinars on Twitter, and repost the webinar information and the blog posts on your own Facebook page so that we can grow the awareness of IsisParenting's online offerings. Thank you so much, and thank you, Meg in California, and thank you to all our attendees, including people across the country and Ellen in Dublin. All right, everyone, have a great week. Happy nurturing, and we'll see you soon.